Okay, I'm working on this 2010 Hyundai Accent today. We're going to be replacing the inner and outer tie rods and the stabilizer links. And we've got a popping noise coming from the passenger side here, which is the stabilizer link, completely wore out. And we're going to go ahead and get the tie rods, the inner and outer, because they have slack in them as well. Okay, I've kind of got all the parts laid out here. This kit's going to run you about $50. This is a Detroit axle kit. I've used these before. Usually I just like to use the OEM boots, but if they do have damage to them, I will use these. And it's got the clamps. These are kind of, I think you really need a tool, but basically they kind of like wrap around there and you bend the tabs, you bend it back. And it makes it really tricky doing it up in the car there, so sometimes I'll just use a zip tie to hold it, depending on how hard those are to put on. Here's our stabilizer links. Very easy, nothing to those. Usually you got a piece on it here to hold it because it'll try to spin. You can see how it's flat there. You can use a crescent or whatever while you tighten this. And then we've got the inner tie rod, and you'll notice that it's got the flat places to use the tie rod tool. You can get a loaner tool from AutoZone or Advance. Usually part stores will have loaner tools. Here's the outer tie rod that's going to go on to this after you get the inner in there. Now the trickiest part of this is just getting the boot back where you can get in here and get to your inner tie rod. Now these outer tie rods are just kind of mirror images of one another. They come with the grease zerks and everything. So this is all of the pieces here. Okay, and here's another look at everything we have laid out here. Now like I was saying, there is a tool you can get that will go in there and get a hold of this. Now in this case, all I'm going to be using is this tool here. Now this is also an inner tie rod tool. You can get it at pretty much any part store. Just go in there and look around for something that looks like this hanging up on the shelves, or tell someone what you need and you can get one of these. And to me, this is a really simple device. Now the main thing about these is they're made for the ones that are smooth. Some of these inner tie rods are smooth, they don't have the flat, so you can't use the tool. But this works just as well on the ones, whether it has it or not. You can use it to take it off and tighten, and it's just a simple little tool, and you don't need the big setup and the bar and all that. And so it works very well. It takes a 3/8 either extension or an adapter, and you can use a 1/2 inch. It just goes into this slot right here, and you go in there and you tighten it up. So that's what we're going to be using on this. So we're just going to go ahead and get started and get the vehicle lifted up and everything here. Okay, we've got a 21 here. The first thing we're going to do is just slightly break these 4 lugs loose before we go to lifting it up. I'm just using kind of an extended handle ratchet here. Okay, now we'll go ahead and get us a jack position here. Okay, I'm just back here behind this tire. You can see on this part of this frame where it kind of comes back here, and just lifted it there. And we also just got us a jack stand up here, and we're just going to leave that jack in place. There's no need to remove that, and we'll go ahead and work on just taking these lugs completely off here. Okay, now we can remove the wheel cover, and we can go ahead and get the wheel out of the way. Okay, I just want to point out at this point the wheel inside is perfectly straight, so the wheels are straight. Okay, so the first thing we're going to get in here and work on is this stabilizer link. Now this here is a 15, but what's going to happen when you go to taking this thing loose, and this is going to be really tight, by the way, so you want to get you a extended handle. So I can't even get it with this, but anyways, you come in here behind it, there's this flat part here that you got to get an 18 millimeter on. So you come in here behind, you hold it with that. Now that's going to keep it from spinning on you, because this thing will just spin in that socket. It's really wore out. So we're going to get the 15 hold of it out here. We're going to hold it with that. Okay, so I'm using my extended handle ratchet, and I'm just kind of holding this. Now it'll be a little bit easier if you use an extension on here to get out past this brake and stuff here, but you're going to have to hold it nonetheless on the top and the bottom to get this nut. Now if you've got an impact to use, it's going to make things much quicker and easier for you. You're just going to be able to zip it, whether it's a cordless or an air impact, you'll be able to just zip this right off of here. But we're going to go ahead. You see how much I got to go there, and you can douse it down with some WD-40 if you like. Okay, so there we have that 15 completely off. We can move that back out of there. Now we've got to do the same thing down there on the bottom. We've got to finish getting that off. Okay, so we're down here on this lower, removing the 15 down here. Okay, now we can completely remove this. Now another thing that we want to do is on both sides, we want to take this stabilizer link out. And the reason for that is it's going to make it easier to get in here. Now you notice with it loose on both sides, I've already got the one off. On the other side, I can move this stabilizer bar out of my way. I can push it up and out of the way there. Okay, the next thing we're going to want to do is work on this outer tie rod here. We're going to need to get this cotter pin out and straighten these little prongs, wires out. Just pull that, and there's that. Now we're going to go ahead and just break this here loose. Okay, so we're going to be using a 17 on this, and if you have to, if it tries to spin on you, you'll need to push up on this and kind of force it in there, but usually they don't spin until you got them knocked loose. We're going to go ahead and get this loose, and that came loose very easily. Okay, and I'm just going to spin that up there like that. Okay, before we knock that outer tie rod out of there, we're going to want to go ahead and break this loose. This is a 22, or in my case I'm using a 7/8. And what you want to do is just, you have to get back here, push it back, and you take a rubber mallet or whatever and just hit and knock this nut back in that direction there, and that's gonna loosen it off. Because just whatever you do, don't get backwards, because you'll get to thinking if you're going tightening or loosening. Just try to keep in mind which way the nut itself is having to go there. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take a rubber mallet, just kind of hit this thing and loosen it off. Okay, let me back up 1 second. Before I loosen this off, take a tape measure and get right where the threads end and measure back to that nut. Now, in this case, I'm getting about a 1/4 of an inch there, it looks like. I'm going to try to zoom in here on it. Okay, so there we are on that, and what I'm doing is measuring back here to the edge of this nut right here. Or if you want to measure to the other side, you can. Just remember which one you measured. And you can see that's like about a 1/4 inch of threads, and of course it was different on the other side. So the other side, I set it back to where it was. Of course, this is just, you know, keeping it about where it was. I'm going to try to get it a little closer before we're done here. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so taking a rubber mallet, so I'm getting back here and hitting this, I'll knock that nut loose. And once we got it loose, that's, you know, pretty well good enough. You see it's turned a little bit. Okay, now on this, like I said, I've got it kind of backed off there. Let me zoom up on it a little. I'll just show you. We've kind of got it backed off a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is take my socket, 17 in this case, just a little short socket, and put it on there. And this keeps me from damaging the nut, because a lot of times I like to use the original. And we're just going to start hitting it. And hopefully, so this one here is being really stubborn. Let me adjust this. Okay, I had to move the camera there and get a little bit rougher with it, but it did come with about 4 or 5 more hits. Now the question is whether or not this nut will be any good, because it's kind of seized under. Now what I'm going to do is put a wrench under here and just kind of pry down with it, and then I'm going to take my socket and just loosen it back off. Said the replacement ones are usually not as beefy as the OEM. It's the reason I like. But this one was more stubborn than the other one. The other one took like 3 hits and came loose. This one was not going to relent, so I may have very well ruined this one. So I'm just going to put down pressure on this while I'm forcing this nut off of here. Okay, so I like reusing these. You can see the difference in the aftermarket, but this one did get damaged. But however, usually they're not quite that difficult to knock out of there, but some of them they are, and this was one of the really stuck ones. It took a lot of force to knock it out. Now even with a tie rod tool, you'd think you could get that out without damaging it, but you'll still, because of the hole in there, I have bent these bolts to where they were unusable. So the danger is, if you're removing your tie rod for some reason to need to get to the knuckle or do whatever, and it's stuck like that, then all of a sudden you're replacing an outer tie rod, because sometimes you simply can't remove these without either damaging the nut or this part here to knock it out. But we got it out of there anyway. We're going to go ahead at this point and just start loosening the outer tie rod off, so we know our position. And we're just going to go ahead and take it completely off. You see, we're just spinning it out of there. Once you get it loose, there's nothing. It should come right off. And you can see the condition of this outer tie rod. And this car, I believe, is at 150. But you can see the condition. I mean, it's just wallering all around in there, and you can also feel how it's rubbing and stuff as well. There's no way you can align a car when you got that much movement going on. And this inner tie rod is probably no better. It's a little loose, but I'm not feeling the slack, so that's a good thing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 22 millimeter and we're going to get a hold of this this bolt here on the inner tie rod. Okay, now what I'm going to do is get back here. You can see where you can get a hold of this. I'm using a crescent. We're just going to get this crescent where it's going to fit on where the flats are. You can barely see them, but they're there, and they're to help you hold this steel. So we're going to get that on there. We'll take this 22 millimeter and we're going to get our ratchet, and we're just going to go ahead and finish taking this completely off. Okay, and there we have that nut off of there. And like I say, you have to hold this, because if not, this whole inner tie rod will just sit there and spin. Okay, now at this point, the next thing we're going to do is get a hold of this clamp up here. Okay, we'll just take some needle nose and just pull that right off there. Okay, the next thing we do, up here on the back side of this boot, we have a band. It's something like this. And what we have to do is we have to get up there, the part that's sticking up, we'll take a flat screwdriver, and then we'll take a hammer and we'll just hit that, just lightly hit it. Just hit that hammer, and we're going to basically just pop that band loose. That's going to release that, otherwise we won't be able to get this boot here off. Okay, so I just want to show you what I'm talking about here. You look over here on this side of this tie rod, you can see it right back there at the back. That's the band. That's the part you got to hit right there with a flat screwdriver, or you got to pop it off there or something. But basically, that needs to come off, come loose, so we can get this boot off. So we're going to pop that band loose back up there. And then once we get that, this whole thing will just come right off of there. Okay, another thing I like to do is spray this with some white lithium. It's just going to make getting this to slide over this a little bit easier. I mean, you're really going to have to pull on this to get it off of here. Once that band's loose, you just pop it off the back and just tug with everything you got there. But that white lithium will help, but you still got to pull really hard. And there we go. So just pop that back out on the end there. Just take your screwdriver and pop that back out. It'll try to invert on you. Okay, and there I popped that back out with a screwdriver. Okay, now we got to get in here and get our tool situated. And because we've got, like I was telling you, take that loose on both sides. Because this is out of the way, you can see when we go in here with this tool, this thing's going to get in the way. You can see how that stabilizer bar will get right smack in the way. Now, of course, it's easier with the OEM inner tie rod tool, but you know, I don't have that without getting a loaner tool. So this will get the job done just as well without having to mess with all that. So we're just going to attach it, you know, right here. And I have seen where with that inner tie rod tool I couldn't even find the size to fit what I was trying to fit. It was either too small or too loose, and if it's too loose, it will not break it loose or torque it back down. So it has to be a nice tight fit. So now we're going to go ahead and get in here with our 14 and get our little ratchet on here. We'll get up there and start tightening those down. Okay, so just tighten these up nice and tight, nice and snug. Usually don't have to get just crazy with it. You don't want to break your tool. I'm assuming that enough, it might actually break. But we just want to snug each side down evenly. And then we'll go ahead and get set up with our extension here and our adapter. Okay, this takes a 3/8. However, I'm wanting to use 1/2-inch extensions, as you can see. So I'm using this 3/8 to 1/2 adapter. So we're going to go ahead and just get this plugged into here, and then we will get out here with our extension, and of course try to get it to where you can actually do something here. I've kind of got this heat shield a little bit in the way, but it's going to be fine. I'm still going to clear it. So I'm going to get out here with I'm going to get a little bit more of an extension, and I'm going to get out here with the my extended handle ratchet, and we'll get this broken loose. That's all it is. We're going to go counterclockwise with this tool just like we would anything else, and that's going to grip it and break it loose, and we'll torque it back the same. Okay, so here we are. We're set up with the tool, my ratchet, and I haven't tried this. So there we go, it's loose. And that's all it takes. And now, so once it's loose, all we got to do is get in here and loosen this tool back off. So we'll just loosen these here up. And you can see how loose this thing is. I mean, it's so loose you can just loosen it. Once you get it broke loose, you can just take it loose by hand. But I need to get this tool back off out of the way because it's going to hit on the subframe there. Now that's the only little hitch to this tool, is that with the bulkiness of it, it kind of hits on stuff where the other one don't. But like I said, the other one's got its drawbacks too. And plus this one, if you have a smooth tie rod, and I have run into a few of those that were completely smooth. Now you will have to take something and kind of, these teeth bite in, so you'll have to knock it off of there. So it will bite into that tie rod, and it will not let go. There's our tool. Like I said, you can see the teeth in there on this U part, the U-bolt, and the teeth on this. That's how it grips. And you can see this is completely loose here. Just spin it out by hand. There we are. Okay, and here is our parts laid out here that we're placing on each side. We can make more sense of it. And you can really tell these old ones. I mean, this is not, the inner is not as bad, I will say, as the outer. But like on the other side, you can tell it started getting water in here. Water somehow finds a way, and it starts destroying and starts mixing with that grease. This one is just completely gone. The outer is horrible. And I'd driven this car previously, and I really didn't notice it that bad, but I'm surprised that it wasn't much more noticeable, and the steering with it being in that bad a shape. And of course this thing is completely destroyed. You can feel how it's grinding in there, and this is the one that was really popping. This side was completely locked up. I had to knock it loose with a hammer, so I guess this side was popping. This side was just locked up for some reason. So I mean, you can see the condition this stuff is in. And I just wanted to point out before I forget, you know, this they said you see what we're having to do here. There's really not a whole lot of special tools. This is a pretty easy job that you could do yourself, and you're going to save a lot of money. I mean, a job like this is really going to cost you because of the just the time-consuming process. You put it in the shop, they got to take everything apart, put it back together. It's just a process, and it's going to cost you a lot, but it's not really a difficult job. So if you do this job yourself, you could save yourself a lot of money, at least way up in the hundreds, maybe even $1,000 for a job like this. I'm really not sure, but I know it really adds up. I think I had a quote for $800 on a job similar to this. So definitely, the parts a little over $50, and you could do this. You're going to save yourself a lot of money. Okay, we're getting ready to go back in with this center tie rod. I'm going to be putting some high strength Loctite on here. Alright, now we're just going to go back up in here. Okay, I'm just going to thread this back up in here by hand. Should be able to get it pretty well all the way down. Okay, that's about it. Now, with my tool, what I'll do, because I'm going to be tightening it, I'll make sure when I place this on here that I got these over onto the left side. That way when I go to tightening, I got room to torque it down. So we're going to go ahead and get this placed on here. Okay, and there we have it placed. So we're going to get our adapter or extension out here, and we're just going to torque this thing down now. Okay, I've got this set to 80 foot-pounds. That's what I usually go, is 80 foot-pounds on these. So you've seen the size of the threads, the end of that. 80 foot-pounds ain't going to hurt it any. Plus we got the Loctite. Okay, so we got the tool back off. It's torqued down. We're getting ready to go ahead and put the boot back on. So I'm just using the original. I think these are much more durable than the aftermarkets. So just slide it on. Now I didn't mention, it's about 4 inches from this to the end of this, if you forgot the placement of it, but it usually just goes back to a certain point. Now you want to make sure that you get the end up in here popped on, and you'll know when you do. You'll kind of feel it, and then you can go up in there and verify that it is into place. Okay, and I'm just using these 11-inch zip tie. Basically, I'm just going to go up in there and loop it around, and you can get these pretty tight. You just have to pull back on them, and they will snug down. And like I said, I like the way this boot fits really tight anyways, so it's really no danger of just popping off there. You get this zip tie on there, and it's going to be good to go. Okay, and just to show you this, it's easy to come around here on this side and just work your arm around here and get that zip tie. You can see where I've got it. Just pull that thing really nice and tight. You can see how it's positioned on there. You can cut it if you like. I'm going to leave it like that. It's not bothering me. Okay, now I'm just getting ready to get the clamp on this outer part here. And so just take you some needle nose and get that back on there. And just to show you what I was talking about here, I'm just measuring from the end of the plastic, and it's about 4 inches. That just tells me it's not pushed too far out and it's not too far back in, because that's back where it was. Okay, now we're going to take and thread this nut on here, and remember, we're going to take it down to where it was. It was about 1/4 inch from this side right here where my finger's at to the back of the thread. So I'm just going to measure 1/4 inch, and I'm going to leave it right there. So I'll come back here with my tape measure and I'll check it and see where I need to move it to. Get it at about 1/4 inch, and I'll start threading on the outer tie rod. Okay, so I got the nut where I want it. I don't want to move that. I'm going to go ahead and start threading on this outer tie rod. Now, another thing you may want to go ahead and do is get your grease zerk in before we get it flipped completely over. But basically, we're going to thread this all the way down to that nut there, and we're just going to stop. We're not going to tighten any of this stuff right now because we have to do a few more things to make sure that our alignment is going to be close enough to make it drivable, because it's going to have to be aligned regardless. If you know anything about alignments, it's pretty critical, and it's not a matter of just getting everything exactly straight either. It's a certain way that has to be done. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get on this grease zerk here. Don't over tighten this. And if you got a grease gun, go ahead and put you a little grease in there. They'll probably come with a little bit. And I'm sure they'll put some more in it when they align it. But if not, put a little bit. Don't overdo it, because once you blow those out, that's all she wrote. Said just snug it. I'm using a little 1/4 inch. Just snug it down, like just barely tighten that thing down. Doesn't take much to strip them. That right there is enough. So we're going to flip this back over, and we're going to get it coming up through here. I'm going to clean that out just a little bit, but regardless, we're going to flip this back over and get it lined up. We'll go ahead and clean that out. Okay, I also put a light layer of lithium grease and kind of wiped it off, so hopefully it doesn't seize and rust in there again. But you'll have to bend this. It's very hard to move these. You'll have to move your knuckle as needed, but you'll have to bend that to get this tie rod to lining up with this joint here. Okay, now that's probably close enough. We'll go ahead and take our nut and place it, if I can locate it here. And this will finish pulling this the rest of the way up on here. Okay, so we're just tightening this 16 up. Now, if you have trouble with it spinning, you'll have to push up on the bottom of this. Of course, you won't want to have your grease zerk in there, but you have to push up on it with a jack or by some means to get some pressure on it. Usually I don't have any trouble. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the torque wrench here. We're going to tighten this down to 45 foot-pounds. And it may be trying to spin on me here because I still don't have the torque I need. Okay, there we go. So we got it to 45. Now let's go ahead and get our cotter pin back in here. Okay, so we're just slipping our cotter pin in. Get our needle nose. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue bending that around the nut there. Okay, so there we have it. Now we're going to go ahead and work on our stabilizer link, getting it into place. Okay, and these have locking nuts. Just keep that in mind. Now we'll go ahead and push that stabilizer bar back down, but it's going to go back in here behind this, where it came from, over the wire. I'm going to start on this top, and this is, like I said, a locking nut. You can see those indentions there. So it's going to be a slow going process, but we're going to get the 15 and start tightening this down. Here it's a 14 or a 15. Okay, what's a 14 then? And we'll go ahead and hold it with a 14 on the back, and we'll tighten it with our 14 here. So I'm just going to snug this all the way down, and we'll torque it. Okay, so I'm still holding it with the 14. I've got my torque wrench set to 25 foot-pounds. We're going to go ahead and torque this nut. We'll just make sure it clicks a couple times. So there we have that. Now we just need to get the lower into place and torque it down. Okay, before I put this bottom in, I've got a little wooden block so you're not damaging anything, and I got my jack, small jack. We're just going to need to push up on this assembly here a little bit. Doesn't take a lot, because we need to push this up so it's lining up straight with the with this part here. So we have to push that up. You know, it's going to have some tension on it, but basically we just need to push that back up there where it kind of like it will be when it's setting, you know, weight on the tire. Okay, so we jacked it up there a little bit. Make sure you're on the center of that ball joint when you jack it up. I want to say it's easier to get the bottom in first and then the top for some reason, but I kind of did it in reverse. But anyways, we got it slipped in there. We jacked it up a little bit. We're going to go ahead and get our locking nut on there. So we'll go ahead and start snugging that down, and then we're going to torque that down to 25 foot-pounds as well there on the bottom. Okay, so the stabilizer link is torqued. The inner tie rod's in, the boot's on, our clamps are on, our nut's on, outer tie rod on, outer tie rod nut is torqued, and the cotter pin is in. So we're going to go ahead at this point and get our wheel back on, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do next as far as trying to get this a little bit better into alignment. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this wheel back on here. And I'll put our cover with a little indentation for the valve stem. We're just going to snug all of these down. We're not going to torque them until we get everything, get the wheels back down onto the ground. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to snug these down to where the wheel is secured nicely. Know that it's not loose, just go back and forth. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my ratchet. I can get these snug enough for now that to do what I need to do. Okay, I wanted to show you my alignment setup just to kind of get this into alignment. It's going to have to go to the shop for alignment, obviously, but this will get it a little bit closer for the time being. And so we got it secured on jack stands up here. It's a good idea to have you some backup blocks as well. Definitely be safe anytime you're getting under a vehicle. I've got string tied up here on both sides. I'm going down the center line of the wheel. And it's going all the way to the back. And we're tied to the rear shock here, as you can see. And I've done that on both sides. Set on the center line, running all the way to the front. So once we got the string, it's nice and tight. What we're going to do is we're going to go underneath and adjust the tie rod. You can see right there, this one is pretty close. It's not quite touching. So I'm going to bump it out just a little bit more, but it's pretty close. I already adjusted this a little bit. This side over here, I should have perfect. I just got through adjusting that. So all we're doing is moving basically the rear of the tire in and out. That's all we can do. So we're getting it basically where it's straight with the rear, so it's going to be drivable, or be a little bit better. It's not aligned yet, so we're going to come underneath. I've got a crescent, and I'll show you over on this side because it's a little bit easier. Where you make sure that this is loosened off, and then depending on, this one is fine, but if we needed to take the back of the tire out, we're just going to get on here and we're going to turn this counterclockwise. So we're just going to go in this manner, counterclockwise. So we need to bring it in, then we're going to go the other way, and it's going to bring it back towards the string. So that's all you have to do. And then when we're done, we're going to just hold on. We're just going to snug this down a little bit. And you could hold this too with the crescent if you want, just to keep this from moving your tie rod down there. But it doesn't have to be terribly tight. They're going to loosen this back off when they align it. But you can do this and just snug it down, get it nice and tight, and that'll be good enough. So just said you could get a hold of this because it has flats on it, and you'll just hold it there while you just snug that down, but it doesn't have to be terribly tight. So over on to the other side over here, actually need to take that out just a little bit. So I'm going to get a hold of this right here, and we're going to just turn it counterclockwise a little bit, and that's going to just take it out just a little, and then we can go out and check that string, and then we'll come back here and jam that down. Okay, and as you can see, that moved it back out where it's actually bumping the string a little bit more now. So we're going to go ahead and tighten these down. We'll take it for a test drive. Okay, and lastly, we're going to take and torque these 21s down to 80 foot-pounds before we take it for a spin. We'll do this on both sides. Just go back and double check them. Okay, so here we are taking it down the road, and all of the bumps and the bumping and popping noise went away. It's feeling really good. One thing that you'll notice when you get your tie rods on there is that the steering wheel is going to feel a lot more stiff. Definitely stiffens it up. Feels a lot better. Feels more like a new or a newer vehicle with those tie rods in place, but it's like handling really good. Definitely good enough to drive around, but you know, without a professional alignment, you're going to eat your tires up. So it has to be professionally aligned anytime you mess with any of this stuff. But it's doing really good. I'm happy with it. And it feels a lot better than it did before, and said the pops and stuff have gone away. So I would call it a success. Okay, that's going to do it for this video on this 2010 Accent. So it's handling, doing really good, got rid of those noises, and definitely an improvement with those tie rods. Now, one of the things that's very critical is keeping your steering wheel straight. When you're adjusting these, you want it to be even and keep it perfectly straight. It's not uncommon to get it off, even if you line it up perfectly. You go to driving it, the next thing you know, your steering wheel's off a little bit, and then you may have to go in and actually adjust that later if it doesn't get fixed when they do the alignment. But that can be fine-tuned on the steering column if need be. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. You know, $50 for the kit. You know, doing this yourself, you're going to save a lot of money, so it's definitely worth doing if you have the time to do it. But that's going to do it for this video. If you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. As always, I invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.